Hopefully everything's just fine, because I am doing multiple streams, but hopefully the mic's good. I could probably increase the volume just slightly. Hello. And then that didn't reset. Let me go and fix that really quick. I have to keep changing the style every time I switch from the D&D stream to this one now, so it's like, ooh, a little extra work. Hi, Legend. Good to see you. Hello, hello. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I just want to talk. Just, like, get some thoughts out. Because, like, I have a lot of burdens, I feel like, that I just carry throughout life, right? I think it's impossible for anyone to go through life without any sort of trauma of some kind, right? I need head pets. Thank you, thank you. I just find it absurd, right? Where I don't know, you try to do as much as you can, and, you know, you have to wonder, does it lead anywhere, right? And it's kind of funny, right? Because I already came to this conclusion a long time ago, but it's still hard to put into practice. The idea that life has no meaning, you know? And I accept it, right? There's a lot of people who think of that conclusion and they think, no, right? I can't do that. And it's hard. I'm not gonna lie, because that's why we have religion, right? That's why people believe in a god or gods or something, right? Otherwise, if there's no meaning, it's what are we doing here? It's just like people have nothing. What's the point? But like I've accepted that fact. I've accepted that there is no meaning in life. So then people are gonna ask, like, what do you do, right? What's the answer? Because it's a huge problem. As like Albert Camus like succinctly put it, like the only philosophical question that is like a problem is suicide. Just gonna say it out there. Because like, you know, what's to stop people from just like, you know, just leaving the world? Because it's a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot for a lot of people. And the thing is, fortunately, Camus does have a response. Granted, it's not an answer that a lot of people like, but it works out for me. Which is, you know, is to essentially fight back against the absurd, right? To rebel. To essentially just, you know, accept it, even when it doesn't accept you back, right? Because within itself, you're creating meaning when there is no meaning, if that makes sense. Which is weird, right? It's like almost like a paradox. It's like if life has no meaning, but you decide to say that you create meaning anyways, right? Like, how does that work? And it's weird. It's weird. It's really weird. But I see it. It works for me. When a lot of people don't understand that. And that's because they don't actually... I think there's a sort of disconnect with their belief system, with like how they value life and like how they value others in general. Cause like, I don't know, it takes this level of openness to really reach that many people don't achieve. Because I think too often people are way too concerned with their own life that they tend to forget everything else in the periphery. They start to lose focus of like what the actual whole universe is. And for me, I know a lot about the universe, right? It's just like there's so many things out there, like everything from math to art to just like philosophy, just like even human psychology and just like politics, war, heck, my veganism, and like, you know, I've thought about life a lot, which, you know, I do wonder if other people think about life this much as I do. Life is literally what you make of it. You can be content with life being meaningless. You can pursue and think there is more to life. You can just live in the moment, think about the world's purpose for later. But if you don't make life what you want it to be, then you wasted your life doing nothing. But, I mean, that's another thing, though. You can technically still live life doing nothing, because I still think that's also a valid way to live. Because, like, think about our even capitalistic system right now, right? Like, when's, you know, don't you just feel good when you do nothing after, like, a long day of work? Couldn't you, like, wish that just lasted longer? Because I think there was this, I actually read this, like, not too long ago, but I think it takes home the point that there was a fisherman and a businessman talking to each other, and the fisherman is, like, fishing fish. Granted, me being vegan, of course I'm not going to eat fish or fish, but that's, you know, that's a totally different topic. But this is a metaphor, right? So the fisherman's just like doing his thing. He's just living his life catching fish or whatever, because that's just what he does. And the businessman is like, hey, why don't you like catch more fish so that you can like sell the fish, make a business, and like make a profit? And he was like, the fisherman's like, why would I do that? And the businessman is like, so that you can make enough money to retire, and then you can relax and enjoy the rest of your life till you're old. And the fisherman's like, aren't I doing that right now? Like, I'm just chilling, doing my thing without having to like retire and all this stuff. So, you know, I have to, you know, bring home the point that like everything that we do in society, like, why do people do it? You know? Where there's been a problem with ever since I think with the internet coming out. Hey Cynthia, good to see you. Hello. Yeah, I'm just like putting my thoughts out there to really discuss like problems in the world and just like discussions about issues that I think people just need to come together and actually really understand what I think about things. If that's the case, then why is doing things so pushed on us? Well, exactly, Legend. Why is it that, you know, society does this, you know? We have a housing crisis. We have climate change. Everyone hates politics. Everyone hates wars. You know, no one wants to see poor people on the streets. Nobody wants to see anybody go hungry. People don't want to work in slaughterhouses, right? Why do people still keep participating in these things if they don't want to do these things? You know? Um, like, sure, I can sound like an idealist. I can sound like I'm pretty naive, but I'm not, right? I know what I'm talking about. The issue is that these people just don't want to do it. And it's like, why? And it's because they're only willing to put themselves ahead of everyone else. Like, they're not willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of, like, the future for others. If I'm gonna be honest about that. Part of it could also be ignorance, right? But even with that, right, like, you should still, you know like, take the time to educate yourself about it. I think a lot of people are afraid to lose everything, to put their line on something that isn't going to have any returns, essentially, right? Because that's just how capitalistic nature is, right? You don't start a business to come out even. You make a business so that you can make a profit, right? But, like, it's not hard to understand that, like, you can't have profit forever. That's not how life works. Life has ups and downs, just like how the economy does, but, like, businesses have ups and downs. But if you look at all the top businesses, they're definitely trying to always make a profit. There's nowhere in there that says, like, yeah, we should just definitely lose money on this because it's the right thing to do. There's no incentive for that. There is none of that whatsoever. And it's a huge problem. What's up, Sky? What's up? Yeah, just talk about life stuff, because, like, I'm not gonna lie, the world's shit, dude. Or even, like, the issues with just, like, jeez, I have so many thoughts. You're at the gym, dude? That's nice. It's good to work out. I was working out a lot throughout high school and college, so it's good that you're doing it. You're definitely gonna need those to work out your brain, work out your muscles. It's good for you. Definitely recommend it. But anyways, I'm talking about some deep shit though, Sky. So if some of this goes over your head, don't worry about it. I can discuss in detail later if you want. But this is, everything I've committed my life to has always been about others. And I'm serious about that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've come from a privileged point in my life. Hey Dion, good to see you. I was very fortunate that my parents, when they visited from Vietnam to escape the Vietnam War, they worked their asses off, right? They came to this new country with, like, nothing, and they made it rich, essentially. My parents did pretty well when they made it here. My dad started a business in, like, farming, and it ended up being pretty big. He had, like, hundreds of acres of land, and he sold it all, and he got this, like, $1 million house, essentially, that he's still living in right now. But the issue is that he got so involved in politics that he was just, like, giving money for nothing. And then he also he got too ambitious, which is, he used a lot of his money to invest in projects back into Vietnam to make it capitalistic, essentially, to sort of, like, turn Vietnam into the US of A, which didn't pan out. Cause in Vietnamese culture, one of the issues is that um, status is everything. Like the higher up in like position you are, the more you're respected. Which is why, you know, in our tradition, we respect our elders, right? We respect those who have lived longer than we have because they have more experience, they have more knowledge. They should just know better than we do, and also they've lived life longer than we have. So they should just have all the life experience to pass on to the next generation. But, you know, clearly my dad wasn't very... how to describe it? I don't know. He's become very bitter and very distrustful of society and just like the nature of people, because it feels like he's been shafted. You know, he's lost. He almost has like no savings, right? Fortunately, he's like subsisting because fortunately, you know, he had a lot of children. I have a lot of siblings who are willing to take care of him. And so he's still able to live comfortably, but not as comfortably as he would like. And so, you know, me growing up as a kid, getting involved in politics at a very young age, and, you know, seeing someone become so rich and then just, like, fall down so far is, you know, it really does affect how you perceive the world already. And then not only that, I also grew up Catholic, and just, you know, I'm not even religious, right? I don't even believe in God, but, you know, I don't discount it, which is why I understand why, you know, why God's a thing, why religion exists. You don't pay attention to politics anyways. Good, Dean. I recommend you don't pay attention to politics unless you educate yourself about it, because there are people who get involved into politics just because someone else told them to, or because they think they're doing what's right without actually understanding the intricacies of what's going on. Because I think too often people, when they get involved into politics, they think there's a right way and there's a wrong way. But they don't necessarily realize that there's more options. Like, there technically is a right way, but it's not right in the way that the media and how the US government kind of portrays both sides. Because I think it's important to understand why it operates the way it does first before you come to your conclusions. And from what I understand, a two-party system does not represent all the ideas of the universe that we can potentially have in society. So you have to look at politics, at least in the US, that you don't have all the options that you want. You're only looking at two sides, and you have to look at, okay, which side is less shittier than the other? That's really the best way you can put it. But if you go to other places, like, for example, Canada has like 7 parties or something, right? 7 parties has way more options than fucking 2. Like, that's a way better system than having just 2 parties to represent all the ideas. Because what it is that these 2 parties, they sort of water down everything. Or at least that's how it should be, but sometimes... Okay, to put it straight to the point, the Democrats are just watering down all the good ideas just so they can get a bigger vote. And then basically on the conservative side, they basically just double down into their conservatism. Yeah, everything in the US is two-sided, but the thing is, that's not how the world works. You know, it's not two-sided. It's multifaceted. It's, you know, there's more to life than just right and wrong. There's so much more than that. It's not like, oh, you work and then you don't work, right? It's like, oh, Democrats are the party of the not working people, whereas the conservatives are the party of the working people. Like, no, that's not how it works. That this binary issue doesn't exist. And that's the problem when people get into US politics, which is why everyone in the world hates us. because you know, we essentially become the arbiter of, you know, we decide what we think is right, even if we go against our own values. For example, it doesn't make sense why we support the Kurdish fighters to fight against ISIS and like so on and so forth. But like, you know, the thing is that the Kurdish fighters are completely socialists, but the people here hate socialism. So it's like, what the fuck are we doing, right? Like, why are we supporting people who are socialists, but we hate socialism here, but we hate ISIS more, so we're gonna support socialism over ISIS, right? So it's just like, you know, maybe we're missing the point that, hey, maybe the socialist Kurdish fighters actually aren't bad, right? Like you can't just support them and then say socialism is bad here. You can support them and say, you know what, hey, they believe in socialism, maybe we should look into why they believe in socialism. Otherwise, why are we supporting them? And, you know, I do support the Kurdish fighters. I'm not gonna lie. I believe they need their independence. They need their own country. They're shafted by all these people, and, like, you know, they're definitely an egalitarian society, you know? Like, it's amazing to me that, you know, their people are willing to fight, both men and women. And, like, the women there are, like, respected, right? They're almost treated as equally as men, because, like, they even have women in, like, you know, like, general positions as well, right? Like they're, like, commanders. In fact, the women fighters there are also, like, really good snipers, too, which is really cool. But anyways, moving on. Perfectionism that never works out because we aren't meant to be perfect. Yeah, of course, we aren't meant to be perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect either, because, like, there's always something to work on, right? And that's another issue that people don't understand, is that, you know, they think that, okay, so we have God, right? God's perfect, right? God is the embodiment of pure perfection, omniscient, omnipotence, omnibenevolence, like all the 9 yards, right? You can't surpass that. So anyone who is perfect, or who claims to be, says they're God, essentially, which is just ridiculous, right? You know, that was a day back in, like, the Stone Age, you know, just like, oh, hey, monarch is, you know, we have monarchies and things like that. Oh, kings, right? I am divine to rule by birthright, because, you know, because I'm a king. And it's just like, no, that's not how it works. So why do people believe in this shit, right? You know, people look at it, social media, and they see someone out there who's just like, oh, look at this perfect body, right? And it's just like, what the fuck is that? That doesn't mean shit. You know, there is no perfectionism. And it pisses me off, right? Like, why do people look up to these people as if they're perfect when they're clearly not? I don't even claim to be perfect, but I at least assume responsibility, right? I at least know that I still try to do the right thing. I'm only human, right? I'm the same as you. I'm not better than any of you. I don't know where people get this idea where they think I'm better than other people. when that's not the case. You know, I treat them as much as I would treat myself. Is that a hard concept to understand? Why is that so hard for people? You know, treat others like you would like to be treated. That's not hard to understand at all. And it pisses me off, right? Like, what the fuck are people doing? Just like, hey, if I'm nice to you, just be nice to me, right? And then we can all just be nice? Like, what the fuck? um, but and then it's another thing when people don't like look at their mistakes and say, all right, I messed up here. Because I do admit that, right? I do admit that I, make mistakes here and there. I'm not perfect. Like, fuck. Like, I admit I haven't been playing a lot of Minecraft recently, I haven't been working on the server a lot lately, because, like, shit's been happening. I want to get back to it, and I will. But, things happen. I recently just talked to my brother, which, if people know, I've been helping someone out, like, personally. Like, they got into a divorce, and it's been pretty rough on them. And so, I talked to Hung. Dion. But yeah, essentially, like, their new job is supposed to, like, be kicking in, but it's not. It's taken a little bit longer for them. And that's reality, right? He was hoping within 2 months, like, things would just, like, be good, right? He could be self-sufficient. He could be self-sustaining. But, it's unfortunately harder because what's happening is that, like, essentially he's almost like a business salesman. So, like, he's trying to compete with other competitors. And, like, customers are, like, sort of talking to, like, other competitors, and, like, they're sort of, like, outbidding him, like, in price and everything. So it's like, oh, how much can you install this for? And it's just like, oh yeah, we can install it for this price. And then they go to someone else, and then it's like, oh, can you install this for cheaper? Because this other place is installing it for this much. So, it's pretty unfortunate. So, like, I don't know how consistent I'll be able to do things with, like, Minecraft and all that stuff. But I want to make it work. It's just like, there's just so many things on my plate, so many things going on. But yeah, it's a huge problem. But yeah, like, as much as I want things to normalize, sometimes they just take longer to do so. And, that's fine, right? I'm willing to put up with it. The issue is, like, are other people willing to put up with it? And, of course I don't fault them for it, right? I'm not going to be like, hey, I don't appreciate that you're not going to stick around. No, it's like, yeah, I totally understand if you don't want to stick around because nothing's been happening. Because, I don't know, what can I do, right? I'm trying my best here because there are situations outside of my circumstances happening that I just can't do. That I can't do anything about. I certainly didn't ask for these things to happen, but they did anyways. And so I have to make the most out of it. Yeah. Anyways, life's absurd at the end of the day. And by absurd, I don't mean, like, nonsensical, but, like, the actual definition of absurdism. Which is, life has no meaning, everything you do and everything that happens to you, you know, there's nothing you can do against it, right? You're just caught in the waves of of the ocean. It kind of just pulls you wherever it wants you to. Whether you happen to be in like a very nice like area where it's like very calm, the waves are calm, or it's a freaking it's a storm where you're drowning, right? And you're trying to like swim up for survival, right? um uh yeah, it's just it's hard to put into words of just how do you navigate through all this. And like for me, I yeah, exactly, you don't have to do it all alone, which is one of the huge problems that we as a society, at least here in the US particularly, we have such high individualism here that it's really a problem. There are people here who are very bullheaded, where they don't consider other people's problems as their own. They just refuse, right? Because they distrust other people. They don't trust other people. They can only trust themselves. And to a point, I can understand that if for, let's say you have some sort of trauma of being betrayed, right? And I have been betrayed many times, unfortunately. Whether it's personal relationships, or just, I don't know. People just don't know how to handle secrets because they're just, I don't know why. I don't know why they need to share things. You have trust issues too, right, Dion? Right. But just because I have trust issues, right, I'm not gonna let that get the better of me. I'm not gonna let that get rid of people who, who may not break it, right? Like, I have to continue believing in people even when that happens. And that's a very hard thing for people to do. They can't really do that. People just kind of suck. Yeah, my dad is actually one of those people. It's kind of brought him to a point where he's kind of like racist. I'm not gonna lie, because like he always feels like anytime he talks to someone, he has to think he's better than them always, right? He has to always feel like it's like a game of chess or something where it's this game where he has to be better than them and outsmart them so that he can have leverage and power over them, to have control, to have authority, to sort of have his way over theirs, right? It is on the edge of narcissism. I'm not gonna lie, it is on the edge of narcissism. But I think it's more than that, though. I think it's, remember, he had everything, right? He had a business, he had hundreds of acres, he made so much money when he moved here. He got a big house, whereas in Vietnam he didn't, right? He had to share a house with his big family. And like he had to escape a war zone where over there he wasn't sure whether he would live or die, right? It was life or death there in Vietnam, in the jungles. Literally he survived in the jungles for like 2-3 weeks or something. I can't remember the number exactly, but he was essentially trying to escape from the drafting, because in southern Vietnam they were drafting anyone who was 17 years old to join the war effort against the North. Um, and so for my dad to not be drafted, uh, my grandparents told him to say, go hide in the jungle and don't come back for like a few weeks, essentially. So like, as crazy as in, I it's wild, okay? It's a bit much, but for him to literally be out there in survival mode, he had to become an animal, right? Just like he had not I want to say an animal, because I feel like even with animals, like we can, like, look at Despy. Despy is an apex predator. Look at him. Look at you. Apex predator. Would you kill? No, Despy would not kill. Um, but essentially, like all animals, humans are animals too. Don't forget. If we're backed into a corner, right? We're gonna treat everything as life or death. We're essentially gonna take things into instinct, which a lot of people are doing things by instinct, uh, uh, because they don't want to think about things. When they don't think about things, they let instinct take over their senses and to sort of, take care of their traumas automatically without having to have the will to try to do better than that. So a menace. I guess by your definition, sure, Dion. They can end up becoming a menace to society. Which, I feel like my dad has kind of fallen down that rabbit hole, right? So that's why, he's at this point where he's like so distrustful of other people that, he can't yeah, he can't work with other people. He only trusts those who are like family at this point. Because he knows within the traditions of the power structure of like Asian heritage, him being the eldest, he has power, he has leverage, so he's comfortable there because we respect him, but we respect him because he's our dad, not because of the culture. The culture kind of helps with that, but I don't really believe in the culture that much. I don't, I'm very progressive, right? I don't stick with tradition. I was born and raised Catholic, but I obviously didn't stay Catholic. My parents are not happy about it. My aunt, who's a nun, isn't happy about it. But so what? I'm not gonna leave my hands to just God to handle all my problems, right? Right? Which is a problem that people do, right? They're like, oh, yeah, if they're guilty conscious, they just go to church on Sunday and now they're resolved of all sin, right? Like, they can continue drinking, they can continue doing like terrible things as long as they go to church, right? Like, that's not fixing the issue. They're sort of just passing the problem off to something else, right? They're not blaming themselves. They're not taking responsibility. They're just using something else as a scapegoat. Which I hate, This is what I mean when people aren't willing to do the right thing. They're not willing to do good for other people. Like, they're not willing to stick their neck for people no matter what. Like, I don't know. It's a huge problem for me. Anyways, welcome back, Dion. And so, again, absurd. People don't have any, like, sort of consistency to things anymore either. For me, I try my best to be consistent, right? I try to be a good person no matter what. And like, some people don't think I'm a good person. And I can see why they would think that. But like, they're not discussing things with me though. They're just choosing to. For me, I don't choose, for as bad as my dad is, I don't think of him as an evil person, right? I just see him as someone who came out of something with terrible circumstances, right? He was caught in the Vietnam War. He was super rich at one point, then he just like lost it all because he got too involved in politics, and just like he got stuck in his ego, right? He got stuck into the culture of having to have status. Status meant everything to him. In the good name of like what it means to be a Nguyen. But again, I don't see him as an evil person. I feel like, me being a good person, I see everyone else as trying to do the best they can and the best way they think they can. The issue is that, people aren't willing to take responsibility for the mistakes they've made, and, they're, again, it just makes them bitter people. Which I think when it comes to being a virtuous, good person, what that means is that you try your best, even when things are bad. Like, you give other people the benefit of the doubt. As much as you dislike it yourself, you still try to do the most good you can. Even when there's no benefit to you at all, right? Self-sacrifice, which, I think is the embodiment, closest thing to God itself. Like, if God were actually real, God would be completely 100% self-sacrificing, right? They'd be someone full of love and compassion, someone who cares, someone who does not want to see suffering in others, who does not want to spread cruelty, someone who wants the best for others, right? And this is what I thought God was, right, when I grew up religious, And, I'm certainly not trying to be God. I know I can't, because I know I'm human. But I understand the concept of God, and so to be a good person, I should at least try to be as close to that as possible. Whether there is one or not, that is, that makes sense to me. God would see good in everyone, even when there's evil, right? God would see good in the devil, in Satan, right? Because they're just fallen angels, right? Essentially. They're just fallen angels. Because he created them, or she, or, I don't know if God has a gender, to be honest. I mean, God could be anything, right? But, people don't really look too deeply into these things, Like, people just think of God and they're just like, ooh, religion. Or, people think of God and it's just like, oh, God, forgive me. And then, now I can do whatever I want. Like, no, people don't think of God as... People aren't looking at God as this way to sort of keep us sane. Because why do we still have religion, right? Why have we had religion for so many years, so many decades, centuries, where we've had wars waged over this idea of God? And that's because, it's a sense of control, it's a sense of power. But people have wielded it in wrong ways. People haven't considered the consequences of like how they use God. For me, I try to use God in a way as a way to better myself, to not become God, because I'm not that egotistic, But I think it's still a good reference point to understand that, you know, what is the ideal, right? What is the idealistic person that I should become? And that person should be God, right? How do you become this compassionate person who understands everything about life, who has the power to do so much good for people? How do you do that? And this is where I come in, where I try to be vegan, right? I try to be antinatalist, right? LGBTQ plus, right? Just like human rights, you know, fucking climate change, just like, you know, not have the poor, you know, be poor and not have housing, you know, solve the housing crisis, give people food, not exploit others. Just like, what does it take to be a good person? You know, these people don't think about it, whether they're religious or not religious. It's not this non-binary, it's not this binary thing where it's like, oh, if you're religious or if you're non-religious, right? Like, you're in these two separate camps, but I choose to go in between, right? It's not like I'm atheist, but it's not like I'm not atheist either. In fact, I'm just agnostic. I don't know whether God exists, or if he does, or if he doesn't, or she, or I don't know, they. It's, again, I don't know the gender of God. But, you know, I think differently, right? I take a different path that most people aren't willing to take. Because it's the much harder one. You know, people want the easy way out, which is, you know, oh, God exists, therefore, you know, I can put all my problems on God, or like, God doesn't exist, so now I don't have to deal with those people, right? Like, I want to deal with both people, right? I believe in all people. That's what God would do. God would believe in everyone. Yeah, most religious people refer to God as he, but I think it's me being LGBTQ plus, right? I don't think it's too hard to see God as potentially being they, them, she, her. I personally, I see God as all these things, right? I see God as this person who can totally understand all these issues, right? I think it's funny when people refer to God as just he, right? I don't think it has to be that way. I think God could be anyone, anything. God can be whatever, you know, they want. It wants. I don't know. But the thing is, there are three definitions to God, though. And God needs to be these three things, at least if we're talking about the monotheistic God, because I was raised Catholic. They have to be omnipotent. They have to be all-powerful, essentially. Omniscient, all-knowing. They understand all things about the universe. Or even outside of the universe as well. Beyond our understanding. And then omnibenevolent. Just all good, all loving. Right? Those are the three virtues of like what it means to be a god. Now, this doesn't talk about, you know, polytheism, which is multiple gods. Like, that's a totally different thing. But, you know, I still think about these things. You know, it's possible that God could be all these different gods, right? Like, if God could be anything, God can technically be a polytheistic religion as well, technically, in my eyes. God could be Zeus, God could be Hades, God could be Poseidon, and all the, you know, all these other gods together, right? Like, God could be all these things all at once, you know, at least in my eyes. Granted, I'm not religious, like I said. I'm agnostic. I don't know if they exist, it exists. But just, you know, these are my thoughts. You know, that shaped me as a kid, right? Growing up. I always ask questions of, why did God make me? Why did God make me this person that I am right now? Like, why am I me, right? Why am I this, Asian person who happened to be born in this family in Southern California, right? Why was I not someone else in, say, Africa, or just, I don't know, maybe even Asia, born in Russia or Europe, or who knows? Uh, who knows? Um, these questions I always ask myself, right? As far as I can remember, like, why am I here? Why am I me? Um, and again, that goes back to the absurd of just like, there's no meaning in it. There's no point. There's, it just is. And so you kind of just have to live with that fact and, do what you will with the cards that you're handed with. And, as much as the universe doesn't care, or, some people might blame God. People might say God doesn't care. But I wouldn't even say that's God itself, though. Like I said, remember, God needs to be omnibenevolent. That's one of the key factors to a God, is to be all good and all loving. So it's like, okay. So that's not really God. That's not really God. Whether God exists or not, again, that's not the point. The point is, how do I as a person get close to that if I have beliefs and values that I want to follow, right? Again, consistency, responsibility. How do you become a good person? These are things that I ask myself, that I follow, that I really try to answer for myself. Again, I'm not religious, but I think God is still an important fact to that. And then I don't just look at, monotheistic religions. I've looked at Hinduism, Buddhism, right? Shinto, right? And Shinto can be considered not a religion. Maybe it's perhaps more of a spirituality kind of thing, where, when they referred to kamis, they were not really gods, but spirits, just like of the natural world, right? It's, the forest spirit, or, like the boar spirit or water spirit, right? Like, these are just things of the natural world that makes up the energies that surround us. And, they watch us every day, and we must respect it. But anyways, yeah. So, again, I took a philosophy of religion class. I couldn't help but just connect all these different ideas together. Put it into something that makes sense to me. That is, I think, the best way to approach life. Because again, it's, these people don't question these things. People don't make up an identity of who they are, or why they believe in these things, and how do they go through life with these things in mind. I'm someone who really wants to unite everyone together. Like, I want to believe in the good in everyone, Again, I don't hate anyone, I may dislike people. I may not appreciate some of the things they do, but, I don't blame them for it, Perhaps they're just, they're just lost in life. That's really all I can really put it. But anyways, yeah, it's no surprise though, because of like, I was born this way, and like, how I look at other people, especially in my own family, who are the way they are. Even though my dad is like religious, he's a Catholic. It's like, why are you racist? Why do you hate other people? Doesn't God say to love other people? Doesn't make sense to me, right? How do you believe in a church where it's just like, yeah, we need to forgive people, and then it's like, no, I'm gonna hate other people, like, or like, I'm gonna distress them. You know, I'm gonna say they're evil. You know, it's, you know, like they deserve to go to hell. Like terrible. It's ridiculous. I think a true God would say that everyone should go to heaven. You know, like I mean, hell, I remember thou art in heaven. You know, like just like bring heaven onto earth essentially, right? Isn't that the ideal, is to bring heaven onto earth, right? Not have it just stuck up in the clouds with angels, but actually bring heaven down here where everyone can also live in harmony. um like that's the idea. um Anyways, moving on though. It's no surprise that because of that, from my childhood to by the time I made it into college, I think I was either a sophomore or a junior. That's when I became vegan, essentially. So I've been vegan for like 5 years, over 5 years now. Um, because, you know, again, what would God do, right? Reduce suffering, have no cruelty. Um, and for me, being vegan does that, right? And even before I became vegan, I was also anti-natalist as well. Um, I I was uninterested. I'm still uninterested in the idea of having children, right? Like I'm willing to adopt children more than have children. Like that's how far I'll take it, right? Because I feel like, you know, those adopted children need good parents. They need good families, right? They have no one to care for them. So why should I have my own kids when there are kids out there that need families? You know, they need help. Uh, and then, you know, again, just goes back to the suffering of also the animals that also I choose not to eat, right? Or, you know, to exploit as well, right? Like, I'm not here to take advantage of them. Like, you know, I'm not here to take advantage of Despy here. Like, Despy is just chilling. Just let him live his life, you know? If he wants to do nothing, he should do nothing, right? If he wants to play with string, he wants to play with string, you know? Like, I feel like that's the same thing with our society that we need to do. Like, you know, if people want to do nothing here, sometimes they should just be able to do that. You know, and then there's proponents who are gonna be like, oh, but if they do nothing, you know, there's gonna be people working and they're not deserving of any of it. But it's just like, we make so much food, we waste it. Like literally we can feed all the hungry in Africa based on how much food we produce. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? We're wasting so much food. Um, Hell, look, I get gas at like this AM PM, and like every morning I get gas there. Not every morning, like there's someone who's like throwing fresh food into the dumpster, right? Like every day. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like that was like literally just yesterday's food. And because no one's buying it, like they have to throw it out. But it's like still good food, right? Like it's only like a day. But like we're so wasteful. We're so wasteful. Because people here need to make a profit. And it's not profitable to give that food to people who are hungry, who are poor, you know? Like, what the fuck? Fucking pisses me off, man. I hate it. You know, people just need to be able to live their lives. You know, like, I'm not saying people shouldn't work. I definitely want to keep working, right? Again, there's always something to improve on. I think when people work, it should be something to better themselves, to do more good, right? And to not seek harm. To really, you know, enlighten others, to make the world a better place for others, right? But, you know, people can get really greedy unfortunately, with the system that we have. And it just makes people careless and not care for others with how the system is. You know, it destroys me sometimes, right? Me knowing what I know, I'm just one person, right? I keep thinking about all of this, about how society could be so much better, you know, because I care for everyone. I really do. You know, I believe people deserve better, but no one takes it seriously. Or, you know, people just don't have the will to, or they're not willing to think about it. They're not willing to put up with all the stress, which, you know, I don't blame them. Again, I'm not telling other people to be me. I'm not, you know, I'm just telling other people to just think about it, right? Just to, you know, like, I'm here to discuss that with people if you want to make the leap forward to be a better person. Granted, I'm not the best person, you know, I'm not saying I'm God, but, you know, through each other, we can help each other improve, is what I'm trying to say at the end of the day. Same goes for the animals here, right? Despy makes my life so much better, right? You take care of me, don't you? It's nice when I'm having a hard time and Despy is there, and he knows when I'm having a hard time. He knows. I'll just like lay down in bed and I'm just like, I can't do this. But he'll crawl up and then he'll just like, you know, he'll start making bread on my chest or near me, and it's nice. You know, he'll start purring next to me, and like, you know, that means a lot to me. You know, and like, you know, this isn't someone who I can speak with, but at least he understands, emotionally speaking, that, you know, I'm trying to do the best that I can. Jeez. Ridiculous. Anyways, I do love that quote, though. If we believe in nothing, if nothing has any meaning, and if we can affirm no values whatsoever, then everything is possible, and nothing has any importance. So to go back to that point, life has no meaning. It doesn't just stop there. I took it a step further. I accept the fact that life has no meaning. So the question is, what does that mean for life to have no meaning? And that's kind of funny, right? What is there to ask it to what it means if there is no meaning? You already answered it. There's no point. But that's not really it, though. That's not how conclusions work. Because things are entangled, right? Like the universe, all the laws of physics, we're all still under it. You can't escape that fact. But that doesn't change the fact that we can still do things with it, right? We can still make physics do things because we can still predict what it will do. We can still think about what will happen. So, if I accept the fact that life has no meaning, what does that mean? And the fact is that if life has no meaning, then that means nothing is more important than anything else. And like that sounds pretty obvious, right? If life has no meaning, there's nothing is important, right? There's nothing is important. But that's the liberating thing, which is kind of interesting. That I don't think people understand, is that if nothing is important, you can do anything, right? Everything is equal. Everything matters. Which sounds strange, right? If life has no meaning, yet everything matters, how does that work? How that works is because I don't see other people as better or less than me, right? I see us all as equal. We're all in the same boat. All the animals, me and you, everyone on this fucking planet, all the aliens out in space and all the different planets out there. We're all in this meaningless world together, and no one is better or worse than anyone else. So we should all treat each other equally. The ideal world is possible with that in mind. And it's this one idea that's been able to keep me going no matter what. This idea that because life has no meaning and nobody is more important than anyone else or anything for that matter, good or bad experiences, they all mean something equally, you know? If I've endured trauma, I can use it for good, right? The trauma can be used for something. My trauma isn't better or worse than other people. It's just trauma. It is what it is, but I make use of it. It's an experience to learn from. It's something not to hinder me, but to see its potential to. Right? That's what it means when everything is possible, when nothing has any importance. That is what it truly means. I think, you know, this is something I've had to deal with for like a long part of my life. And it's strange, right? Like, I'm only 26. There are people who are like in their 40s, 50s. My dad, for example, who are still just as hateful, just as misguided, just as, you know, just inconsiderate. Who are not questioning things and not willing to put, you know, the test of time, the test of like humanity. Like, how do I keep living, right? Because like a lot of smart people end their lives, you know, a lot of smart, good people, because they can't handle all the hurt, all the pain, all the suffering in the world. Yet I endure, right? Despite that fact. How am I still alive when there are so many days I cry, I'm so frustrated, I hate the way things are, I look at climate change and it's just like, man, the world's literally burning. How do I do this? And I do this because of this one fact, is that life is meaningless. Therefore, everything is equal. Nothing is more important than anything else. Everything else is treated equally. We're all in the same boat together. We all need to do something, right? I don't see anybody else as better or worse than me. You know, whether you're LGBTQ, right, transgender, you know, just like whether you're a different color, race, religion, culture, doesn't matter. Everything's possible with that when life has no meaning. And it's been liberating for me. People don't take it that far, but I do. This is the one thing that's been like keeping me afloat. Is this like this one thing, and I can't see anything else break it. You know, again, this is why I know what I know, and I'm able to discuss issues with just clarity, such openness, you know, much love and calmness. Whereas other people just freak out, or they aren't able to handle things, or they're just spiteful. I don't choose to do any of that. I've come to this conclusion through my own self, you know, through my own thoughts, through my own mind. Whether anybody else understands that, I can explain that to you if you want to know. But, you know, it's a life-changing path. And it's not easy, I'm not gonna lie. It's not easy. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I expect everyone else to just do it. But you know, this is the closest to God that I can reach, right? It's hard. it's kind of wild, you know. Like, how do I continue smiling, right? How do I how do I continue to, you know, when I know the world has gone to shit, how do I continue to keep my sanity, to keep doing good when it has no benefit to me at all? And, you know, it's through that one idea alone is how I do it. How I continue to still be vegan, you know, how I continue to still keep giving to others when I get nothing in return. To, you know, to only expect goodness in other people. It's, yeah, it's, yeah, that's just how it is. I don't, I just need to put that out there. You know, I get tired, I get sad most days, but, you know, I still try to put a smile on my face, right? I still know that I'm trying my best, and that's really all I can really do. Even days where I just feel like I'm not doing anything, I still know I'm trying, right? Or, you know, it still has relevance, because if life has no meaning and it's pointless, you know, that means it still matters, you know? Me not doing nothing is still important. Same goes for people, you know? People who are supposedly lazy. Doesn't matter. Sup, Sky? What's up? How's your gym? But yeah, that's I think it's good to kind of put all my thoughts out there. You had a good workout? That's good, man. That's good to hear. Today was a push day? Nice. Nice. Were you doing curls or what? Bench press, incline, dumbbells. What's up? Was it like upper body strength today? I don't know. Biceps and triceps? That's good. Yeah, it's good to work on those. A little bit of shoulders. Yeah, it's good to have definition there for sure. I was definitely like a bicep tricep guy. Definitely for sure. Jeez. Damn, man. Yeah, it feels good to say all that out there, because, like, damn, I shared a lot. And it's only been like an hour, 20 minutes. What you missed, though? Your phone died like halfway through your stream? Ah, bro. You missed so much. I talked about so many ideas. Granted, some of them can be considered controversial, but I don't think it's controversial because of the belief that I have in things. Because, yeah, I discuss everything from, like, you know, God to just, like, what it means to be a good person, and just, like, why are people, like, the psychology and, like, society of culture, and just, like, politics and, like, economics with, like, capitalism and whatnot. Talked about a war and, like, Kurdish lands and stuff like that. You're always a good person, Dion? Interesting. Do you try to be close to God, Dion? Like, I don't mean that you have to follow God, but did everything that I discuss about how God is those three things is important to being a good person? Did that make sense? Because, like, when I put this out there, I want to hope that when people look at this recording, people understand it. You know, even if they don't, I'm always willing to clarify, right? Like, I don't expect people to just pick it up. Like, it took me 26 years to master this. But, like, I figured it out. As hard as it is some days, I'm still able to push through. Like, you know, there are people who are much smarter than me, who have great hearts, but they haven't made it, you know. But, you know, I plan on staying here for the long run to continue, you know, doing good things. Good evening. Life means in German Leben. Oh, if you spell it backward, it's called Nebel. That's fog. Oh, hi, Selenix. That's interesting. I had no idea. Let's see. I mean, considering the fact that you're not religious, you're not that close to God, if I know what you mean. You're raised to be a good person. That's fine. But you have to understand the standards of good becomes relative at that point, right? And I don't want that wishy-washy of like, oh, good in this instance, not good here, right? Like, I don't want the definition of good to be spoiled by imperfect beings, right? Does that make sense, Dion? Because as people, we're naturally imperfect, right? I don't claim to be perfect. I don't claim to be this all-good person, right, Dion? Like, it's hard for us to say that, oh, I'm the best good person ever. I'm the most good there is. Therefore, people should worship me. Like, no. You understand that problem, right, Dion? Where if you call yourself a good person, that's fine. Just understand what does good mean to people. Which is the problem, right? And so this is why I base the idea of good based on this concept of God, even though I'm agnostic. I don't really believe in God, but nor do I disbelieve him either. I'm kind of like, whatever, right? Whether he exists or not my problem. What is the problem, though, is whether our definition of good becomes relative. And I don't want to muddy the meaning of what it means to be a good person. Exactly, right, Dion? None of us are perfect. So how do you become a good person if we're not perfect? So the only person who's technically perfect would be God, right? God is the closest thing to being a perfect person. Now, we can debate whether he exists or whether he doesn't, or, you know, whether, whether it's like even, I don't know, whether we discuss God as gendered, right? Or, you know, or what religion is, you know, God comes from or whatever. But like, all that doesn't matter. What matters is the three components to God, right? God is all-knowing, omniscient. God is omnipotent, all-powerful. And God is omnibenevolent, all good and all loving. Those are the three steps to being God, right? And none of us can be God, right? It's impossible for any human to be God. But if God is all these things, that is the definition of good. You don't really define good as being close to God. Well, then what is good to you then, Dion? Because it no matter how you cut it up, right? Because remember, these are rules, like Dion. These are rules like physics, like gravity. You know, gravity works because this will always fall to my hand no matter what, right? This is how gravity works. This is a law of physics. You can't break this law. You can't beat gravity, right? I mean, you could go to a different planet and stuff like that, but gravity still exists on this planet, right? You can't just change gravity and be like, oh, nope, gravity doesn't exist. There's a different definition for gravity here. Like, what I mean, Dion, is you don't have to believe in God. Like I said, you don't have to believe in God. If God makes you uncomfortable, that's fine. But God is still these three things. Remember, I took a class on religion, the philosophy of religion. This isn't anything. This doesn't have anything to do with whether God exists or not, or whether God is good or not, or what like whatever. What matters is these three components to what does it mean to be a perfect being. Because that is what God is. God is the perfect being, because none of us are perfect, right, Dion? Right? But God is, supposedly. Because that is the definition of God. Otherwise, there is no God, right? But that is what God is. And so if we're trying to be as close to perfect as possible, that is what I base things on. Whether you believe it or not. And I don't really care, right? I don't believe in it, nor do I disbelieve, nor do I choose to say that God doesn't exist. I'm agnostic. I don't care. All that matters to me is how do we define things? Where do we draw the line? Where do we describe things to make sense, right? So, to broaden this discussion, Dion, what does it mean to you? How do you describe good then, right? How do you describe good, right? If you describe good as perfect, I mean, I guess that essentially boils down to God. That could be another way of putting it, to God, right? How do you describe good then, Dion? Because that's the big important thing. Because I think a lot of people don't explain what good means. What does it mean to be good? How do you make it into a definition that works universally? To you, being a good person doesn't necessarily mean being perfect. You see it as someone who knows what they're doing, and they have common sense. Okay. They know the difference between right and wrong. But the question is, who decides that, Dion? Exactly. The definition of good is hard to describe when you describe it in that sense. For example, Dion, right? Let's think about social conventions, right? There are people who think it's rude to be honest, right? To tell the blunt truth, right? There are people who say, oh, your music sucks. You should really try to do better, right? Wouldn't that hurt, right? But how do you know they're doing the good thing, though? What if they're right, though? What if they do know that, yeah, your music does suck, right? But they're doing a good thing, technically, right? In their eyes, right? In their eyes, being brutally honest and saying that your music sucks is good. But to you, maybe you don't like it. I don't like when you tell me that my music sucks, because I tried really hard. You wouldn't pay attention to the hate. Right, but that's where the problem is, Dion, right? This is where this problem where if they're trying to be good and you're trying to be good too, Dion, and they're two different definitions, they end up clashing, right? You get into fights over the definition of good. Does that make sense? You get into this problem where you think you're a good person, they think they're a good person, and you both just end up making things worse because you both end up hating each other. Does that make sense? Which ends up not being good, as funny as that is. Does that make sense? Because that's not good. Not being good means to have no fights, but if you're having a fight over something where you both think are good, that's not good. Does that make sense, Dion? Does that make sense? I hope that didn't get too lost, but if this person's trying to be good, you're trying to be good, but you both clash because you're both trying to be good and it doesn't work out, that's not good. Does that make sense? Good, both trying to be good, but they're both not on the same page, so they end up not being good. Does that make sense, Dion? That's the problem that people don't understand. Whenever they get into politics, whether they get into economics, whether they, start discussing traditions, religion, all these different issues, it's all the same thing. Everyone wants to be the good guy. How do you know who's the bad guy? And this is where I come in, where I say no one's trying to be a bad guy. I think everyone's trying to be a good guy, But we need to come to a definition of what does it mean to be good, right? Because someone's common sense versus another person's common sense isn't going to work. So we have to put it to some unconceivably impossible standard. You think some people want to be the bad guy? That's fair. That makes sense. You know dang well in your heart that you're a good person, but you got to remember you're autistic, so you take everything very seriously. Yeah. Exactly, right? There are some people who don't think what, you know, like Billie Eilish. Huh. Oh, gotcha. Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, she makes great music, though. I like her music. It's good. Anyways, yeah. But anyways, I know you're trying to be good, Dion, right? Again, but there are some people who think, like, you know, you being autistic, they don't know you're autistic, right? So when you talk to them on the street, they may think you're weird. And so they don't like it, right? So then, you know, they don't think you might have common sense because you're autistic, your common sense isn't the same as theirs. Yeah, I know she's vegan. That's why I love it. I love that she's vegan. It's great. It's wonderful that Billie Eilish is vegan. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, much love to her and compassion. Yeah, exactly. The song, Dion. It's a great song. Bad guy from Billie Eilish. But yeah. But yeah, this. Do you understand what I mean, though, Dion? Right? Like, because because people have these different definitions of good, it starts to get muddied. Like, by putting a definition on good from a human standard, our imperfection naturally makes good imperfect, which I don't think is good. Does that make sense, though, Dion? When we put it that way? Because if we make good a relative value, like something relative to us humans, it starts to neglect the fact that it doesn't apply to what good means to my cat. What does good mean to a giraffe? What does good mean to my dog? What does good mean to someone who's transgendered? What does good mean to someone who's different from me? Right? We can't have a definition of good applied to only a subsect of people. Or, you know, a subsect of animals, you know, per se, right? We need good to apply to everything. We need good to apply to everyone equally. And so the only way to do that is if we apply goodness to some impossible standard, and that's God. You know? But again, you don't have to believe in God. I'm not saying you should believe in God. All I'm saying is that good is something that makes you change. Good is something that makes you look at life differently all the time. Good isn't something that, you know, is stagnant. Good isn't just this one thing where it's just like, oh, good is, you know, being a Democrat. Good is being a Republican. Good is being liberal. Good is being, you know, socialist. Good is being vegan. Good is being transgendered. Like, good is this. Like, no. Good is, you know, having to involve love and compassion for all things, which is God. Omnibenevolence. All good, all loving. For everything. Doesn't matter whether it's hate, whether it's discontent, whether it's misery, suffering. You still have to treat good in it, right? Like, and that's hard, right? How do you forgive like imagine someone in your family was murdered, right? Like, how do you forgive the murderer, right? Like, but the definition of good/bad or right/wrong is also a thing of your educational background. That's fair. Yeah. Because like the thing is, like, people don't learn this stuff, right? Like, this isn't something people think about. Like, this requires thought. I wouldn't have thought about this if I didn't take like if I wasn't raised Catholic, because I've always questioned God when I was raised Catholic, because I wasn't sure, is this right, is this wrong? Like, how would I know what's good and bad? And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't know. And then I took a philosophy of religion class, which made me look at, and then I took like a class of mythology as well. So I looked at like Hinduism and Buddhism and like all these different religions, right? Like, I tried to understand what it means to be good, right? This is what I put all my eggs in one basket, right? To like get this far. You know, I read Albert Camus. You know, not everyone has the opportunity to read Albert Camus, you know, to understand what it means, what that means, right? Absurdism. And like, how do we get good from that? But this is why I'm here to talk, right? I'm here openly discussing this to share my knowledge with other people, right? To hopefully explain why I'm vegan, why I believe the things that I do, why do I try to be a good person even when it seems hard, right? How do I improve myself? How do I take responsibility? How do I, you know, how do I look at my mistakes and try to do better, right? How do I say that I have faults, right? How do I accept the fact that I'm not perfect when I'm trying to be a good person? And this is how I do it, right? Which is using the impossible idealistic standard of God, which none of us can obtain, right? What is antinatalism? Antinatalism is essentially not bearing your own children to, you know, continue the cycle of suffering and misery of other generations, because we already have enough children who don't have homes, who are, you know, who need to be adopted, essentially. Like, this even goes against people who are parents, but they treat their children terribly. Does that make sense? Like, for example, like, you know, like, what if the father is a drunk? Why is there a word for it? Because it's a problem in society. It's an issue that, you know, like, we think, like, it's like the same thing where we think it's normal to be, you know, like a Caucasian, I can't even pronounce right, sorry. A Caucasian straight male, right? Like a straight man, right? Like, we have to normalize all these different ideas. But anyways, it's antinatalism is still an important concept though. Like, it's like, why do we neuter, you know, our cats and dogs, right? It's not like we, like, you know, as a society, like, do we want just like a bunch of cats and dogs just procreating, and then we have all these homeless cats and dogs on the street just getting hit by cars and stuff? Like, no. Like, we want to not have that happen. We don't want these animals out there to have no homes, to just like, to spread diseases, stuff like that. It's the same thing when we have our own children. We need to be very thoughtful and careful with, like, you know, when we procreate, like, are you gonna be responsible for it? Which unfortunately some people just aren't doing that. You know, I'm having to deal with people who have children, and then, you know, they say the children is, you know, the reason why their life is miserable. But it's like, you decided to have them in the first place. Like, they didn't agree to be born, you know? Touche. You didn't know there was a word for it, which you as a person can agree with, since you're weird about the idea of kids. Right, exactly. So, like, this is what it means, antinatalism. Like, I didn't realize there was a word for it for a long time either, but I just came across it like a week ago. Cause like, as far as I can remember, even when I was like in high school, I was like, I don't know if I can have children, man. Cause like, I looked at my own life as a teenager and I was just like, man, my life sucks. Like, why was I born? Like, like, I can't, how am I supposed to have a kid if I'm like this? Like, I can't do that, right? If I ever have a kid, I can't have them endure the same misery and suffering that I am going through right now. I just can't do it, you know? Like, I can even try to be the best parent in the world, and that's never gonna stop the trauma or the pain and misery that could potentially happen to them, whether it's in my control or not, you know? Because that's not how the world works. The world is very messy, and mistakes happen, and, you know, heartbreaks, and just lots of betrayals. Like, things hurt, you know? And so, you know, I don't want to continue the cycle of hatred and suffering for people, you know? Maybe you want to have kids, but it all depends on your partner. Yeah, I was in that same boat, because I, you know, in my previous relationship, we were thinking about kids, you know. Damn, bro, you're hitting your notes? Go for it. I'm here to, like, share knowledge, you know? Because this is, like, some shit I've been thinking about for a long ass time, and it's like, I need to put this into words. I talked about life, like, what it means to be a good person. Like, what, you know, people have varying degrees and definitions of what good means. So how do we come together? How do we get past all that? You know, whether you agree with what I say or not, you know, like, again, I don't claim to be perfect. I'm not saying I have the answers for everything, but it's an answer that works for me to keep going when life sucks, you know? Like, it's how I continue to try to better myself and to try to improve my understanding and to improve the lives of others when there's no benefit to my own, right? I'm not here to benefit anything from anyone. I'm here to just make the world a better place. That's it. But anyways, back to the point. Yeah, so my previous partner, like, we're not together anymore. Just, you know, we were thinking about kids. We were thinking about we adopt one and then we have one of our own because she wanted one of her own. But, you know, I wanted to please my partner, right? I'm not there to antagonize or to say, like, no, because I could see her point, right? I'm not gonna argue, nor am I, like, completely, you know, dissatisfied with that idea. But now that I'm single, I can actually think about it now, right? You know, because I'm not trying to cause problems in my relationships. I'm trying to just, I wanted to make her happy, right? But, you know, unfortunately, because I think so much, I do have some values and beliefs that are very, you know, hard-edged, which, you know, Vystopia, me being vegan, you know, it's hard. It's like, how do I continue to keep being vegan? She was vegetarian, and, like, you know, I was putting up with it, right? You know, I wanted, you know, of course I would prefer her to be vegan, but, you know, it's like, again, I don't expect perfection. It's just, the important thing is that things didn't work out, which is unfortunate, but, you know, I admit that. And it's like, you know, I don't blame her, right? I don't put any fault on her end. And any mistakes I made, I'm trying to make up for it, right? And, you know, me being single, I'm also just thinking about things. Just trying to figure out, what do I want? How do I be a good person? Anyways, though, yeah, so, yeah, you see the cat on the bed? Yeah, my cat's chilling. Yeah, I love my cat. Love my cat so much. I love you, Despy. Oh, so cute. But yeah, it's, how was my vacation, by the way? I wouldn't say it's a vacation. Frankie's sitting in her bed right now, or actually, she might be sitting on the couch. It's hard to tell. She like switches between the two. Um, but anyways, my vacation. I wouldn't say it was a vacation. It was more like I needed a break. Selenix, like, the truth. I don't know if you read the messages in my Discord server, but essentially, I had to take care of a relative in my family, because they were going through hard times. So I kind of had to work overtime, and I've been trying to financially support them while they try to get their life back on track. So I wouldn't say it's vacation per se, but you know, I try to do the best that I can for those who I care and love for. You know, if they ask for it, I do my best, right? And for them, right, I felt like I had to, right? You know, they took care of me. I think it's fair that I also take care of them as well. You know, so I'm hoping to get back into streaming, but it'll be a slow process, right? I'm not ready to game for like long hours yet, because like I'm still working pretty hard. Their job is still kind of shaky right now. So until they can get an income stream where they can kind of like subsist off of it, you know, that then I can like put it in their hands, right? Like I trust them to then carry their own weight and to, you know, finally get back to walking, right? So, you know, I'll be a crutch for somebody if I need to, right? Because, you know, again, I love people, I care for people, I want to discuss these ideas with people and, like, you know, share what it means to be a good person at the best way that I can possible. Again, I'm not saying I'm the arbiter of good. If I could, I would love to solve world hunger and climate change and all these issues like simultaneously, but I'm just one person. Like if this is the best that I can do, this is what I try. You know, I try to be principled and consistent, and hopefully I can share that with other people to share those ideas, and you know, hopefully I can carry on to other people to convince them that, hey, I'm not an asshole. Like, you know, you can also try to be a good person too, you know, and try to think about life in a different way. You know, if people come up with different answers, I'm always willing to listen on like how do they be a good person, right? Because you know, I think it's good to share those ideas, to have those discussions, because I don't think people have those discussions. It's always like, no, I'm right and you're wrong, and it kind of starts off confrontational and aggressive. It never starts off with, okay, so how do we describe what good means to both of us, right? I think that's a better conversation than saying like, oh, your policies suck, your politics suck, and I hate you. And I'm good, I'm the right person here. Like, no, we should come to a definition of, okay, what does it mean to be a good person? What is good? The philosophical question of what does it mean to be a good person? So yeah, you'll have a better discussion there than not. You have dealt with that? Dealt with like discussing fights, or have you like actually discussed like what does it mean to be a good person with other people? Other than just me, right? I know we just talked about it, but like have you started that conversation with other people? And has it been fruitful, right? Has it been like engaging? Has it been enlightening? Because like I don't want like half-assed answers. I want it to be something fully thought out, something where people who's had, oh no, that's a totally different discussion, Dion. That's more confrontational. When you have a discussion of who's right and wrong, that doesn't mean it's good. That means it's fighting. It means someone is superior over someone else, right? Someone has the better idea than someone else, which isn't good in my opinion. What is good is how do we come to a conclusion that equally treats everything fairly, right? Because that's good to me, right? But like, people are going to be like, but the world isn't fair. And that's why, because good is this impossible standard that we should strive for, right? Because good means to change yourself. Good means you have to change as a person. If you refuse to change as a person, you'll never right your wrongs. Does that make sense? Anyways, that was a bit, that was a bit of a strong speech, but it makes sense to me. But like, you know when you're right and when you're wrong, but you're not gonna let people talk crap to me. Right. But it's about being able to take it with grace, though. Like, it means even being good to those who are crap to you. Does that make sense? Like, that's what I mean by being this good person at this impossible standard of like, how do you always be a good person? How do you be this good person who's always loving, who's always caring, And that's what I mean by like, how do you change yourself to be this unbelievably good person? And that's where I come in trying to describe this to people, right? I'm not saying like what you two believe in there, like you, Dion, and you, Sky, like, I get it, right? I've dealt with assholes too, right? Yeah, you take everything very seriously. Yeah, that's fine. That's why this discussion is serious too. Like, I'm not saying any of this I'm saying is just totally for the memes or anything. Like, no, this is legit. But what I mean is that, like, I've dealt with assholes too, and like, I used to be under that impression of like, oh, if they're just jerks, forget about them, right? Just ignore them, don't pay any attention to them, and just like, continue to just fuel the fire, right? Just be like, hey, if they're gonna be an asshole to me, I'm gonna be an asshole to them too, right? You're still dealing with assholes? We're always dealing with assholes, Sky. And the reason why that is because people don't want to change, right? The only way we have a world with no assholes is if people change to become this good person, to become God, is what I'm saying. To become this all-loving person. How do you love everyone and everything all the time, right? One tried getting you in jail. Yeah, like, it's, again, people are assholes, right? People will do anything to continue. It was your ex? Serious? Oh. Wait, this isn't like a recent one, right? Or is this someone who I actually like talked to? I'm not gonna say names, but right, it's just like, like, I'm like, wow. Cause I mean, I could discuss. Seriously? Oh, fuck. No way. Dude, I'm sorry, my man. That's rough. I'll tell you this. No, it's totally fine, Sky. It's I understand the situation a little bit. Just hear me out, right? I don't know the story either. I haven't really talked to them either or whatever, but I'm pretty sure. Think about it this way, right? Think about like a gullible person, right? Someone who's willing to listen and do anything someone else tells them. Who's to say who's that person, you think, right? Someone who's like susceptible and easy to manipulate. Like, it's not hard to see why they would do something like right? It's again, the definition of good changes. Like your ex thinks they're doing a good thing, but to you it's, you think you're in the good, right? This is where this problem of like two people who are both, I see both of you as good people. All right? This is where the things get muddy, right? This is where people need to cooperate and need to come to some understanding, because there's problems in people's knowledge. Exactly, Sky, you're just trying to live your life. This person's trying to live their life, and and I can guarantee you they didn't come up with that idea on their own. Okay? So like don't blame them. Like entirely. I'm sure it's like a bunch of like ideas that were floated around and it kind of came to this conclusion of theirs. So, yeah, it's rough, Sky. It's rough. Don't worry, Sky. Like I'm again, I understand the story and I understand things happen. Exactly, right? Like Sky, this is what I mean. Like, this is what this discussion has been about, I think, for today, that I've been thinking about for a long time. Which is like, why do I still deal with assholes when I'm trying to be a good person? Alright, sounds good, Dion. Have some sleep. Think about what good means, right? Like, I know you think about good in your own way, but like, you have to remember, Dion, like, you're good. Your definition of good doesn't apply to other people. What I'm trying to describe is a definition of good that applies to everyone. And if everyone is under the same boat of good, they can't, they have to change themselves, Because the issue is that people don't want to change, and if people don't want to change, no good will come of it. The only way good can happen is if people are willing to change. And that's what I mean, Dion, is like, you yourself are not changing because you want to believe your definition of good is the only good, right? Granted, I'm not saying my definition of good is perfect. Like, I'm sure I can describe it in a better way, but the thing is, I know I'm not there yet, though. I'm not saying I'm my definition of good. That's how good it is because I know I'm not that good. So for me to try to be that good is so good that other people can't be that good either. So the thing is, if we could try to be that good, it's good for everyone. Does that make sense? Your definition doesn't have to work for anyone else. It'll work just for you. But Dion, what if, like, what if you come across people who are actually, like, trying to be good, but, like, you both just end up being on the wrong foot, right? You both end up just hating each other when I see no reason to, right? Like, this is why people start hating each other for no reason. This is why things like Sky's situation happens, because they don't discuss these things. Because they both think they're good people, Dion. And because these people think they're good in their own definition, they start destroying each other, And they start ruining lives. I mean, you can focus on yourself, Dion. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Definitely focus on yourself. Because I'm not saying that's not good. Because I'm sure, it is good to also focus on yourself. Because you still need to be a good person. But, yeah. Just think about it, Dion, though. Just think about it, right? I can describe this to you in a more accurate representation in person, but I think this is food for thought, though. All right, Dion, like, actually think about it. Like, how do you deal with a situation where if one person thinks they're good and you're good, but you both don't agree? Who's the good person if you're both trying to be good persons? In my eyes, you're both good people, but if you think you're good and the other person isn't good, and they think they're good but they think you're not good, you got a problem, And problems are not good. But for me, I see both of you as good. And that's not a problem. Does that make sense? If I see everyone as good, that shouldn't be a problem. Does that make sense, Dion? If everyone started seeing the world that way, if everyone started seeing everyone as good, we'd all just be good people. Like, that's just how life would change so much if we all thought that way. But, you know, we have to, like, again, I have to share this with people, right? So, again, let me know what you think. Keep thinking on it, right? This has only been like 2 hours of discussion. Anyways, back to you, Sky. You haven't talked to them since January? Yeah. It's hard, Sky. I feel that, cause, like, you know, I'm sure you feel guilt, right, Sky? Like, I'm sure you don't, like, mean to. You don't mean to hurt anyone, Sky. Right? Look. Here's the thing. Not everyone can be on the same boat as you. I know who you can trust and who you can't trust. The people who can't trust, you say, bye, see you never. Right. But, like, Dion, like, me, the way I see it, right, is that when you start to distrust people, you start to create friction. You start to create a seed of doubt, a seed of conflict, which is what my dad does. You know, I see this all the time. My dad distrusts a lot of people, and it becomes an issue, right? When you start distrusting a lot of people, it starts to create conflict. It starts to create hatred. It starts to create, you know, it starts to create problems for other people, you know? Like, are those problems really worth it for your own benefit? In my opinion, no, you know? I'm willing to put aside, you know, my own feelings, right? My own, like, I mean, the thing is, my feelings is that I believe everyone's good, right? So it's not hard for me to put aside my feelings, because my feelings are just generally, like, I'm with everyone. But for you, like, for you to say, like, this person's bad, you know, that's continuing the cycle of hatred, right? You know, like, you're not changing. Does that make sense, Dion? Because people don't change, people won't better themselves. Because how do you better yourself if you can't change? Does that make sense? Anyways, just keep thinking on it, Dion. I'm not saying, you know, like, again, just go to sleep and, you know, try to make sense of it. You could be a little narcissistic too, but you wouldn't care about the hatred and bullcrap being thrown at you. Right. You shouldn't care about things, right? Those things, right? Because I try to not let it get to me either. Because the way I see it is that when people are hating me or throwing shade at me, you know, I just think they're misguided, right? Like, I still love them. I think they're good. They're still trying to be good people. They're just, you know, they're just in unfortunate circumstances, right? Anyways, if you're a little narcissistic, though, ask yourself, is that good, though? And, like, in my opinion, no. I don't think being a little narcissistic is good. I think to be actually good, right, means to not be narcissistic at all. Anyways, just think about it. Food for thought. Let's see what Sky says. There is a reason as to why. You can admit it was your fault for not communicating, but you had a reason to do so. They gotta show you that they changed, but they didn't show you. Then you say bye. Well, yeah, this is why I'm saying, like, this has to happen for everyone, though, you know? But just because they don't change doesn't mean you shouldn't change either, you know? Always try to do better. Always try to change. Otherwise, if you choose not to change, you're just gonna be stuck in your ways, choosing to be who you think is a good person, but is actually bad for other people. Your parents know what you go through. Like, I mean, to be fair, Dion, I have discussed like, it's not like you're the only autistic person I've talked to, Dion. I've talked to plenty of other autistic people, and they deal with troubles as well. Uh, and so, I understand some of the troubles you have to go through, Dion. Granted, I'm not saying they're the same as you, like, entirely, but they deal with people that they get hurt a lot too, and, I feel for that. It's actually kind of a close reason why it's something else is going on in chat. But, yeah. So, don't think I don't understand, Dion, but I do, again, I've talked to other autistic people. They have a hard time adjusting. And I don't think they should adjust. Like, but the thing is, change needs to happen on both sides of the bridges, right? Like, it's a two-lane, it's a two-way street. Both people need to change. If only one person changes and the other doesn't, that's not fair. That's not good. But if both people are willing to change, that is good. That is how good happens. You can apply this to anything in life, whether it's politics, economics, heck, you can go take this in math, right? You can't have one side equal to this and the other side not equal to that, otherwise they both don't work out, right? They both need to be equal to each other. Both people need to change. If both people are changing for the greater good, then that's good, right? But if one person is changing and the other person isn't, you're still left with not good, even if one person is changing. The one person changing is good, but the other person who isn't changing, you just kind of have to hope that they do, right? And, and try your best to still love them, even though, it's hard, right? If you need to, you can just ignore them, right? Don't feel the hate, but choose to be better, right? By choosing to change and be a better person, you're already being a more good person than they are, right? Again, we're all just trying to be good, though, right? Don't say, again, it's not good to say that, oh, this person's more good than this person, but, like, the good thing to do is to think that everyone's trying to be good, like, the best they can. Again, I'm not the arbiter of truth. I'm not God. Again, I don't even know what it means to always be good, but I'm trying, right? I'm always looking to change. I'm always looking to better myself, to improve, to keep smiling when there is no reason to smile, right? Anyways. Yeah, go to sleep, Dion, though. Just think about it, okay? I'm not gonna change your mind. I'm not here to change your mind. That's up to you. If you want to change and be a good person, like, that's awesome, right? Because that, again, I just want to be honest with this. Anyways, you need your sleep. Good night. Alright, good night, Dion. Sleep well. Okay. Well, I don't want to get into too much detail, Sky. Like, I mean, we can discuss it in Discord, but again, I don't think this is the appropriate place to share it. If you do want to talk about it, I'm willing to talk about it. It's just, again, I'd rather not discuss these things publicly like this. If it's like that personal, right? Because, like, because, yeah, I care about your privacy, man, right? Because that's the good thing to do, right? I don't understand people who, like, share other people's problems without their permission or their privacy. Like, what the hell, right? Did they say you can say that? No. So, like, why would you want to make their life worse because of it? So just don't do it, right? So, but yeah, just hit me up, Sky. I'll talk to you about it, because, I got this life advice for you. You know, I've been through plenty of relationships, and you know, uh, I can help you navigate through some of it. But yeah, there's a plenty I could tell you. Just I might have some ideas. Granted, I haven't talked to them in a long time either, but I can give you an idea of what's happening. And so there's a way to handle it, you know. Uh, but there's one thing that you need to not do though, is to deflect, right? Like I know you said you had a reason why for not communicating something, but you know, that's not exactly an excuse. Like if you actually want to be a good person, right? That I'm saying here, right? To become this good person needs to just be completely transparent and open and honest, right? And I'm being as completely open and honest here, like, as I can, right? Um, like, I will say it's hard. Like, granted, it's hard to admit everything, and you shouldn't, right? Some things shouldn't. Like, some things, like, the important thing is if you feel guilty about it and that you try to change it, that's good enough, right? Because I think people need to learn how to forgive. Because forgiving is the greatest good you can do. For example, I forgive all my exes as well. And, like, I hope they forgive me, but if not, that's okay, right? Because, you know, you definitely feel guilty. Yeah, exactly. It eats you inside, man. You know, how do you continue living knowing you carry this weight on you? Because, like, the fact that you feel guilty, right? You know, that means something. You know, that this is where I mean, like, you're still a good person, because I feel like a guilty person, you know, someone who doesn't feel bad for themselves, they're just straight up evil. But the fact that you do feel guilty, right? I still see you as a good person, Sky, you know, no matter what, you know? Um, like, you know, you could murder someone, and I know people would be like, no, I'm against murderers. And, like, I feel that, right? There was a time where I'm against murderers as well, but it's really hard to convince yourself that, like, to be the better person and to change and say, okay, what does it mean to be good? Being good means to forgive them no matter what. To forgive all people, right? No matter what they did. That's hard. That's really fucking hard. But, like, I assure you, as long, like, I'm sure you didn't murder someone, but, like, you know, it's not as bad as that, but, you know, it's, I totally get it. Like, I'm sure, like, I can kind of explain it to you, hopefully discuss you through it. But, yeah, if you definitely feel guilty, I think the important thing is, because you feel guilty, you know, like, you need a way to forgive yourself, but not absolve yourself, right? Like, you can't be forgiven until the other person forgives you, right? You definitely need to clear that up with them. I think that's definitely one of the first steps to do. It's hard. Because, yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. It's definitely hard. It took me some time to get here and to learn that. Because there was a time where I was, like, bitter. You know, it wasn't fair. And it still isn't, but, you know, it's not going to change anything by being bitter. You just have to... There's times where you do want to reach out, but there's difficulties with that. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. You know, it's totally understandable, right? Like, I see you both as good people, too, you know? I'm not gonna choose one side or the other, you know? That's where people have issues, where they choose sides. You know, granted, there are things that are worse, right? Like, like if someone has control over another person without their permission, right? Like without their consent, that's an issue, right? Um, like obviously the person at fault needs to make up for that. Um, uh, you know, cause yeah, like consent is important. Um, like I said, two-way street. Both people need to be okay with it. If they're not, then there's always going to be friction. And so the fact that they're not okay, but you're trying to make it okay, right? You have to somehow work through with that. Like, just know, you have to keep convincing yourself that, one day they will. Or that you'll make something work out with them. You just have to, right? Otherwise, how are you going to live with yourself, dude? I think the important thing is to think on it. Like, focus on college. I think... I mean, I can't really tell you, like, what you want to do with your life or, like, what things happen. But for me, since I've been single for, like, 2 years now... Has it really been 2 years? Holy shit. I've been single for, like, 2 years now. Currently a straight A student. That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, just, like, focus on yourself and stuff. But, like, ask yourself some deep questions, like... How do you be a good person, right? What does it mean to be a good person? Because I think for you, it's always a battle with yourself when you feel guilty. Because I felt a lot of guilt too, and the guilt ate me inside. Like, how do I be a better person? How do I earn forgiveness? How do I learn to love again? Like, can I even love again? Like, should I even be here? Should I even exist, right? Because this is miserable. But I can guarantee you that, like, you are meant to be here. You just have to change yourself to be a better person, to be a good person. Because I believe in that. For anyone who doesn't believe in that, like, and their definition is good, right? Then they're going to be stuck in the Stone Age. And they're going to continuously cause problems for other people because they will refuse anybody else who doesn't believe what they do. Yeah, that's why you're working out. Yeah, exactly. I see that you're trying to work on yourself, Sky. But it's, as much as you work on yourself physically, it's going to be a mental, emotional, spiritual problem, right? It comes from within, right? Working out helps, right? To keep your mind off things, but when you're off of working out, you do have to, like, you have to think it through, man. And this is why I'm here to discuss these things, because I thought about it for a long time. I've thought about life. I've thought about the trials and tribulations that I've been through. Like, how do I live with this? How do I live with myself? And I've figured out an answer, but it's not one that everyone's gonna like or anyone's gonna believe. But I guarantee you, it's the one that keeps me going forward. Like, it's the one that keeps me trying, no matter what. Even on hard days where it's hard to smile, where it's hard to get up from bed. Like, where it's hard to just not cry. Or just to be angry, to be upset with myself. You have to push through, you have to realize that you are changing as a person. You are trying to do better. And that counts for something. You have to believe in that. You just have to. Change is the only way to get over it. For anyone who chooses not to change, they're just going to be stuck, right? If they don't change, they're always going to be where they're at, never, ever able to move on. Because that's the reality. So keep changing, man. That's all I say. It's like, keep moving forward. Definitely learn. Do the best good that you can, is what I'm saying. Again, I can discuss more in detail, right, later on after the stream, because I wanted to get all these thoughts out here because I've had a lot happen in the last month, where like I've been kind of frustrated with like how miserable the world is, and I hate it. I try to do so much good for the world, but no one gives a shit, and I'm fucking tired of it. Fucking hear me out. I'm gonna say what my mind thinks, whether anybody else cares. Like, and I'm not here to change people themselves, because I don't believe I can change them. Only they can change themselves. But I'm still here to guide them through it, right? If they want to listen to me, they can. If they don't, they don't. A lot is going on with you, mentally and emotionally. You have been trying to better yourself, man. I feel that. I know that, man. Talk to me, man. Just reach out. Like, if you need to talk, don't be afraid to. Because I've figured out a lot of shit. What life means, what it all means to me. How do I enjoy life despite feeling all this misery and suffering? And these are the answers I came up with, is that life has no meaning, but everything is treated equally, and that whether or not God exists, I think it's important to try to be as close to as good as what God would be if he did, or if they did, or it did exist. Because obviously we can't, because we're humans, right? We're naturally flawed. We can't reach that. It's impossible, but that shouldn't stop us from trying to be that good of a person. Because if people stop trying to be that good, people don't change, we're always going to be in the shit-stained earth, But if you keep trying to change and keep trying to better yourself, like, that's the only way to forgive yourself. That is the only way to feel like you're making a difference. And you have to accept all that weight you carry on your shoulders, right? It doesn't just disappear. I'm not saying all your problems are going to be fixed. You're always going to have problems, man. But that's okay. That's okay to have problems, because as long as you try to fix it, you try to change it, you try to be responsible, right? And I mean responsible. Say like, yeah, that was my fault. I shouldn't have said those things, or I shouldn't have done that, And I do feel really bad for that, and I'm really sorry. Like, I admit to it, I'm not perfect. I know I'm not. But that's not gonna stop me from changing myself to do better, right? Like, you have to keep going, man. That's all you can really do. And, that's worth the effort. Because, people in the world don't want to change. When they don't want to change, we start to run into problems. Again, to be all good, to be all loving, to be compassionate for everyone, including those that you hate, that's the way to go forward, That's where I am now, right? Like, as much as some people annoy me, I'm still willing to forgive them, right? I'm still willing to give them a chance, As much as people have hurt me in the past, as much as people have betrayed me, I don't blame them for it. Like, whether they choose to be guilty about it or not, that's on them. But for me, I know the things that I am guilty of, and I will right those wrongs. I will fix it, and I'm trying my best. Because, yeah, It's, I just, for me, I think the hardest thing for me, the traumas that I've had to endure while growing up, especially with my parents and my family, was like neglect. Um, I had a huge misunderstanding of like what love is. Like, I was like attached to people. Um, I wasn't able to support myself easily. Um, like it's hard to, like I feel like I can be such a burden on people where like I want to feel valued. I want to have their attention at all times. Um, you know, and like, I'm incredibly needy. But, for me to be a good person, I have to put that aside. Like I'll be needy about some things, which, like, but it's more of in a way that's like okay, right? It's like, oh, okay, if they actually don't mind, then they don't mind. But if they do mind, right, and it's a problem, I have to change that, right? And so that's something I've been working on. Is that's why I've been single for 2 years now. Is that I don't want other people to have to deal with that needy side of me. And I will say, like, being needy doesn't hurt as much anymore. Like, I'm fine just being single. Like, I'm okay if I'm just alone now, like, for the rest of my life. Like, I'm not heartbroken over the idea if I don't get married or if I don't have anyone to love for the rest of my life. Like, if I die alone, I'm okay with that, right? Um, and it sounds sad, right? It sounds terribly sad. And don't get me wrong, I cried a lot, having to think about that. But, I accept it. I accept that idea that I can be forever alone. And like, as much of a joke as that is, I see no shame in it, personally. To be the most good person means to accept things. I don't see it as shameful. Other people might see it as shameful, or they might make fun of it, but for me, it's a very real thing. I don't want to cause more tragedies, Like that's the thing that I'm very sad about with all my previous relationships are the heartbreaks and the sadness that has happened from all of them. Is that like I can't bear to burden that anymore. Um, you know, I like if I do fall in love with someone, great, but it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna have to be someone who's willing to go above and beyond for me, like no matter what. But that's again, I can't expect that of anyone. I'm not going to ever. Because yeah, that's just too much to ask of one person. Because I tried my best for everyone that I've dated. I really tried to give everything that I had. I gave up so much, everything from my career to, my like grades and classes a little bit, just slightly, not too much, but I gave up, I've set aside my own feelings that even though if I was hurt, even though they hurt me, the fact that I still love them, I still tried to love them after the fact that they hurt me, right? It's not easy. It's, it's what you have to do. Or at least this is what I've been doing for so long. But, this is really it. It's rough. It's rough, man. But, it's, I don't want this to be like, cocky or anything, but, if I can do it, I think you can do it too, Sky. Like, you'll be okay. Again, like, I got your back. I got your back. I can talk you through it. So, don't worry too much about it. Cause yeah, I feel that. I feel that very much. I've had a long time to think about it, a quarter of my life. dedicated to just questioning things and figuring out, like, how do I become a better person? How do I become a better person? Like, what does it mean to be good? Like, I want to always do better, you know? I don't like it when things don't change. I don't like it when things stay just bad, you know? Because, like, otherwise the world's just gonna stay bad. And I don't, you know, I can't allow that to happen. Anyways, yeah. Anyways, you'll be alright, Sky. I'm sure of it. Man, I talked a lot tonight. 2 hours and 30 minutes. I've had a lot on my mind. I've had so much, in fact. I don't know how I discussed all this. Jeez, I'm tired. Gotcha. I see, I see. Yeah, we can discuss that more in detail. Again, I don't want to share anything private. Man. It's hard to be a good person, but, you know, I'm trying. And for anyone who doesn't think I'm a good person, you know, what is your definition of good? Because my definition of good applies to everyone. Because if you refuse to see the good in everyone, which I try, even in the worst of people, even if it may seem gullible, right? They may try to take advantage of it. I think it's important to, you know, to give trust first. Then if they break it, then the guilt is on them, right? For messing that up, right? And that guilt is on them to make up for it. Because otherwise, if they don't make up for it, then clearly they're not trying to be a better person. They're not willing to change. But, you know, that doesn't mean they can't change later, you know? Because, you know, again, I don't change people. You know, if they're not willing to change now, but if they can change later, you know, that's what I have to believe in. I just hope I can spread that to other people, because if people are willing to change like that, just everyone decided to want to change and always try to do better for, you know, not for themselves, but for the good of others, the world would be a much better, different place. Oh, Despy is so cute. I'm glad Despy can sleep like this. Despy used to be very skittish. You know, like, even like the slightest noise would like bother him, but he's okay. Despy, Frankie's still a little skittish, but only from like sounds, like sudden noises, sudden stuff like that. My goodness. That was a lot. Yeah. Alright, well, I think I'll put it as that or something, because I don't really got anything else going on. If anyone else has any remaining thoughts or things to say, you know, I think, you know, I shared everything that I needed to, I think, for today. I feel a lot better, you know. I feel better describing all the thoughts I've had. and I hope other people understood it. I hope they understand, because you know, I hope people learn something from this. You know, again, I want to reach out to people, not for myself, but for them. You know, I hope they can see good in themselves and be willing to chase after that goodness. That isn't their definition, but, you know, a definition that can apply to everyone equally. And that is why life has no meaning. This is why I treat everyone equally, because life has no meaning. And therefore, you know, I try to be as close to God, even though I know I'm not, even though it's pointless. But, you know, if God did exist, that's what I would try to do, because that is where I find meaning when there is none. But, you know, even if it doesn't matter, I am equal to everyone else. You know, everyone else is good. Everyone is good. I have to treat them all the same. You know, because yeah, I do love everyone. I love every sentient creature. I love the planet. I love the trees. I love the birds. I love life itself. You know, I just want life to be good for everyone. Why is that so hard for people to understand or to want? To me, it makes complete sense. Alright. Well, I guess I'll leave it as that, huh? I appreciate everyone who's been here and was able to listen. And I hope to get back to my streaming schedule slowly but surely. I think 2 hours and 30 minutes is good for just a chatting, right? But I hope to do more gaming. Right now I still kind of want to just do gaming in my own bubble at the moment. Cause yeah, I've been streaming gaming for a while, but like I'm not ready to just like, I just want to relax, if I'm gonna be honest. I gotta take care of myself since I've been taking care of other people so much. Or I try my best to take care of other people, even though, you know, I want to take care of myself, but, you know, again, I'm not God, but, you know, I try to do the most good, right? Like, I'm not gonna ignore other people's problems. I definitely try my best. It's just, you know, I'm tired. I'd rather give them good advice than bad advice where it's like half-assed. Like, I don't do that shit. Definitely give it my all. So, I'll get there. I just gotta take care of myself, and then I'll be in a place where, you know, I'll be self-sufficient. I'll have more time. I can put my efforts into other people as I would like to. But yeah, love you all, everyone. So y'all take care and take it easy now, alright? We'll always talk again later. Feel free to join my Discord, and, you know, we can chat there, talk about philosophy, like I always do. So, alright. Well, love you all. Take care. Try to be good, be well. Again, just love all things, even though life is meaningless. But that means everything is possible. Because nothing is more important than the other if life is meaningless. It means everything has equal importance. That is the biggest thing to take away. Double down into the idea that life is meaningless, and you realize that everything has importance. Equal importance. If you think, you know, if you look at happy thoughts, sad thoughts, they're both essentially the same in terms of meaning. They both have the same value, you know. Everyone has the same value. All animals, all trees, all people, all planets, everything. Everything that I see in this world has equal equal value and importance. All right, I'll leave it as that. So, good night, everyone. And, yeah, love you all.